Good evening and welcome to this week's episode of Coach's Corner. My name is Dwayne Dwyer, go by the Mindset Coach,
My name is the Uncle Junior, and I go by the Consistency Coach.
and we are your coaches for Coach's Corner. As always, like I tend to say, if you are here and you're just not going to do anything with this information, you get finished, you're going to go back to the TV and start watching it, get you a, crack a cold one and get you some chips, and this may not necessarily be the place for you. But if you're looking to be change something about your life, looking to be an impact to the people that you know, love, and care about, love, and care about, and just kind of be impactful in your community, then you might be in the right place at the right time. In fact, not only that, I think you were destined to be here to hear the voice of myself, the mindset coach, and my good friend over there, the consistency coach. And I think something in the show is purposeful for you. So, that being said, let me speak to my good friend, the uncle with the funk, the Uncle Junior, the consistency coach, what I affectionately call C Square. What's going on, brother? Good to see you. And how are you doing?
What's up, man? I'm doing good, man. I meant to tell you backstage, but I like the shirt.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I'm all
like
ears.
Grogu.
I'm all ears.
Yeah, man. Good day. Had another great day. Um, really want to plug something real quick.
Okay.
Um, if you did not watch last week's show, go back and watch it. That's all I'm gonna say. Please go back and watch last week's show. It was a really good one. So, but other than that, man, I'm doing real good, man. Glad to be able to be sitting here this afternoon with you and having another conversation about whatever we're going to talk about tonight. So, always looking forward to Tuesdays. Always looking forward to interacting with the chat. Always looking forward to interacting with you and anybody else who may be watching. So I am looking forward to this conversation this evening, and see what and let's and seeing what comes of it.
Yeah, man. Likewise, I always look forward to these conversations. Always look forward to
Mhm.
having conversation with you as well. And I agree with you, man. I think last week's conversation was really good, and I hope that this week conversation can kind of fall in suit, because I believe it's one that's going to it's going to challenge us to think just a little bit. And again, this is Coach's Corner. There's nothing wrong with thinking, right?
Mhm.
But just like I said, it's an honor to be here and have a conversation with you. I also believe that it's an honor for us to be in conversation with the livest chat on social media. So again, we greatly appreciate you for joining us. We value you, as you guys already know. You are a functional part of this platform, and I don't think we could do this without you. So thank you for being here. Thank you for taking time of your busy schedule to hang out with these bald headed gray dudes, and listen to what we got to talk about. Oh, he done grew hair. Man, messed up.
Not really, not really. I just been too lazy to cut it.
Messed up. No, I'm joking. Um, but ball and semi-ball. Let's go with that one.
Yeah.
But again, we appreciate you. I can't say that enough. And I don't think we do enough of that in our community. So we want to make sure that we give you your flowers now so that you can enjoy them. So from our heart to yours, thank you for being a part of our community. Is there anything else that we need to share, go over, talk about, address before we get this party started, bro?
Um, I think I already said go back and look at last week's show. I think we got a good lineup of shows coming up here in the future, so stay tuned on Tuesdays for those. Friday nights on Hearts of Men podcast, bunch of great shows over there as well. So just kind of wanted to highlight those, and then again, just again shout out and welcome everybody again to this week's episode of Coach's Corner.
Yes, sir. And to your point, man, it is some good shows coming up. So if I was you guys, I would not want to miss not one of them because I'm
Yeah,
telling you,
not these.
yeah, not these that are coming up. They're really good. So that being said, man, we're gonna get this party started and we're gonna kick this show off. What if the way you see yourself, your worth, your relationships, your future isn't yours at all? What if the choices you make every day aren't choices, but reflexes programmed by generations of pain, survival, and silent obedience to rules you've never agreed to? Hear me out. You may think you're in the driver's seat, but your mind is running on autopilot. The code powering your decisions, how you love, work, and even dream, was written by ancestors you've never met, fears you've never faced, and systems that profit from your numbness. Your potential isn't missing, it's buried under layers of borrowed pain. Every time you say, I'm fine, when you're drowning. Every time you choose safety over soul shaking leaps. Every time you swallow the truth to keep peace with people who've never earned it. You're not failing, you're obeying. This episode is your jailbreak. We're dissecting the silent scripts that keep you loyal to smallness, teaching you to swap survival mode for sovereignty, and handing you three tools to delete generational malware for good. One question haunts me though. How many of your best decisions were made by ghosts? This isn't self help, it's an exorcism. Ready to rewrite your code? Your past isn't your prophecy. So let's begin the purge. Now, consistency coach.
Yes, sir.
You know how we tend to do because we kind of like we like to set the conditions for the conversation that we are about to have. And this conversation this week is titled, escaping the black hole of broken perspectives. And on my YouTube channel it's titled Empowering Perspectives for a particular reason. And I think that's important because I think a lot of time we kind of mishandle the term perspective. So I think that's kind of like where I want to start. And I'm gonna go a little deeper instead of just describing or explaining or whatever. I want to do a comparison and a contrast between perspective and perception. And I know you haven't done this since college, maybe, right? So it's a it's a little challenge out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's important to do a comparison and a contrast between perspective and perception because I hear all the time that people use them interchangeably. And I'm not saying I hear it from people who tell me that people do it. I witness it. I witness people use perspective and perception interchangeably. So if you don't mind, kind sir, would you do
Mm-hmm.
a comparison and a contrast between perspective and perception?
Like you said, I haven't done any of these contrasts and comparisons college, which um actually wasn't too long ago. It was only in 2022 is when I finished up school. So I'm gonna give it a go. So when I look at, I don't know if this is gonna actually compare and contrast, but the way my mind works and the way I think, this is probably how it's going to come out. May come out a little bit different. All right. So when I look at perspective and perception, I look at perspective as being a broader scope, a broader picture. So it's like, that's based off of your values, your upbringing, your experiences. All of these things kind of determine, your perspective on life, the big picture of life. And then I think when it comes down to perception, that's how we interpret things in the moment. So, if something happens, I'm interpreting, this is my perception based off of the big perspective of everything else. So based off of my big picture, based off of my perspective, that's how that's how my perspective is going to be in the moment. Um that's kind of where my mind went. It's not necessarily a compare contrast, but it's kind of, I guess, showing the kind of the differences between the two, if that makes sense. And I hope I did it a little justice.
No, no, you're good. You're good. I like what you said. Um, I think I will say it like this. Not that anything you said was wrong, by the way.
Hmm.
Um, I can't honestly talk about perspective or perception if I don't necessarily talk about the operating system that drives both of them. So there's a mindset that I have. Like let's just talk simple terms. The
Hmm.
brain sits behind your eyes, right? And so your eyes is the lens that you see the world in, right? Now, of course, what you think is in your brain. That's one thing. But let's go a little deeper because your automatic thoughts aren't triggered just simply by your brain, it's triggered by your subconscious memory. So now, given the concept of the mind, the whole aspect of who you are, when I look at the world, what I see is governed by what my subconscious mind is saying to me at that time. So as I'm looking at the screen, and I know some people have done that already, they looked at the background and said, "Oh my God, that's red back there." And then they keep looking, then they see the red, and there's something behind it's moving. They can't really see it, and then next thing you know, okay, that's dark red over in that corner right here. And then they say, real bright red over in that corner right there. That's perception, right? This is your perception of it.
Mhm.
Some people may say red, some people may say burgundy, some people may be colorblind and say, I don't know what color that is. Like all of that matters because it's the lens in which you're receiving from the world. So what you receive goes in that same operating system and it translates it, right? So now that's my perception of the thing because my translator, after the information came in, decoded it and put it in my language. Okay. When I look out and I see certain things and I share my thoughts on how I see the thing or whatever that looks like, that's my perspective of the thing. So information out be perspective, which all goes through this operating system here. Information in is perception. And so the comparison between the two is are both are governed by this operating system, our subconscious thinking, things of that nature. The difference is whether or not it's what I'm throwing out in the atmosphere or what I'm receiving in the atmosphere. So my perspective is what I throw out, my perception is what I receive in. And that spot is I hate to use this term, but please don't be offended by it. Anybody out there in the YouTube sphere or whatever sphere it is, that's about as simple as I can make it when it comes down
Mhm.
to perspective and perception. Did that make sense? Did confusing about
Um, it wasn't confusing. It was different. Um, because I was trying to understand, one's going out and one's going in. Um, where do and then you also talked about the mindset. So does and I don't know if this is even an accurate question to be asking. Does mindset determine our perspective or our perception, or do our perception or perspective determine our mindset? Like, which one comes first, or does it matter? You know what I
yes,
mean? Do I need to work on my mindset, and that's going to dictate, my perception on certain things or my perspective, or is my perspective on certain things going to dictate my mindset, which is going to in turn, you know what I mean? So
I do.
it's like where does almost, I guess, in a sense, I want to say, if someone is trying to work on, or we're just maybe not even work on it, but if someone's trying to get a more of a better understanding about how to have more perception or perspective about certain things, where should they start?
They start by unlocking the mindset. When your mindset is fixed, there is no perception on the planet that's going to change it. Once that person determines to decide that they're going to unlock it, and then they unlock it, now they are open to receiving information. They're open to receiving something outside of what they know. They're open to their perspective being challenged. They're open to their assumptions being challenged. But until they unlock that mindset, it doesn't matter what information they put out in the atmosphere, what information comes in. It's always going to go through that same operating system, and that operating system is locked. So it doesn't matter what it is. And I give you a perfect example because I don't know how it was for you when I was growing up. The man was always holding us down. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
And it didn't matter what it was. It was the man holding you down. And I ain't never seen a man. I ain't never seen the man a day in my life. But that was always the example. And so it didn't matter what we talked about. Oh, that's
Hmm.
the man always trying to hold you down. But we never thought about what took place prior to. We never thought about what the person did to set the conditions to be in the situation that they were. The answer was the man is always trying to hold you down. Well,
Hmm.
once those people decide to stop blaming the man and then start looking at the fact that there's a universal law that's always at play called the law of cause and effect, right? And so For every time that there's an outcome, there was a set of conditions that took place that generated the outcome that's expected. Now, I'm not saying that there are certain things in this world that aren't systemic. I'm not saying that. I'm just
Mhm.
saying that there's some point in time you got to put the hand on the plow and say, okay, I'm going to drive this thing and I'm going to be responsible and accountable. I'm going to be responsible for driving this plow and I'm going to be accountable for whatever this plow produces. Once that person decides that, then perspective opens up, perceptions open up. And it's like, even when sharing perspective, they're not solely fixed on what they're saying and what they're believing, not not to such a degree that they can't receive new information, new feedback, and consider what they're saying as being possibly true. So that's kind of like when I say perspective, different perspectives and perceptions of what people say won't change until you unlock that mindset.
If I may, I would like for you to add something else to the conversation before we continue, right? And it is the if you could share a little bit about the importance of having an open mindset versus a closed mindset, and why you gathering your thoughts. The reason why I want to have you share a little bit is because we're talking about perspectives here. We just started off with talking about perspectives versus perception, and then you kind of hit on a little bit about that. And I think that in order, when we're watching all of these episodes, when we're on here on Tuesday night and Friday night and Saturday night and on TikTok and all these other different platforms, and we're sharing and stuff like this, sometimes people are hearing information for the first time, and some people are going to automatically cut it off and say, no, it's not like that, it's like this. And I think, like you said, sometimes people can get stuck, and they in what's the word, they hurt themselves, or they prevent themselves for gaining access to more clarity and more information because they have that closed mindset. So can you kind of share a little bit about the importance of, if it is important, to have an open mindset about especially when we're talking about perspectives.
Absolutely. And to your point, for people who hear what we're saying and they're saying no, it's like this. They're not wrong.
Mm-hmm.
They're not wrong for them
Mm-hmm.
because they have automatically determined before even trying one thing that we said that it's like this. As thou believe, let it be unto you. So when it comes down to an open mindset versus a fixed mindset, an open mindset considers that anything is possible, not necessarily shutting down anything before considering it and actually trying it themselves. A fixed mindset is exactly what you just heard. They'll shut it down, they'll forget it, whatever the case may be. When you have an open mindset, you will be open to challenges. Not only somebody challenging what you think and how you think, but also challenging what you do and how you do it. So when you hear people, especially when you say certain things like, "Well, I was just watching you just now, and I just seen it. It appears that you did this thing." And that person responds, "No, I didn't. No, I didn't." Closed mindset, fixed mindset.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't even consider that the other person was actually looking at me. And my initial response is, "No, I didn't." And that is a clear indicator that that person has a fixed mindset. So if you are listening to me right now and you find yourself doing that, that is a clear indicator. Let it be known right now. That is a clear indication of a fixed mindset. Do the best you can to come out of that, because look at it as though the other person sharing that information with you that they observe, look at it as a favor. They're doing you a favor by telling you something, and you're not even considering that everybody has blind spots. So if everybody has blind spots, that means that other people can see things about me that I can't see. The immediate response of "No, I didn't," "No, I don't," whatever the case may be, where you're portraying that you don't have blind spots and you know everything there's to know about you. And it won't be, it's only a matter of time before people decide that they don't want to talk to you. And so when you look at your circle of friends, they start getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And then the ones that stick with you, they don't necessarily, have those depths of conversation with you because you're not open to it. So a fixed mindset literally is like a one-way ticket to the rat race. That's kind of like the best way to say it. It's Groundhog Day every day for that person because they have a very rudimentary style of living and they're not open to anything they're doing or anything they're saying or anything they're thinking being challenged. On the other hand, if you have an open mindset, you're 100% to open to everything. Now, you can choose whether you want to do it or not, and there's nothing wrong with that. But you're open to entertaining the thoughts that someone is sharing with you. You're open to entertaining the ideas. You're open to what someone tells you that they observe about you, and then you actually consider it yourself. You're looking to be challenged. You're looking to grow, and it becomes clear and obvious. So that's kind of like what I would say. I think like if you really want to experience the best version of your life, look at having an open mindset and open it as far and as wide as you possibly can. If you're just content with the way things are right now, have a closed mindset, have a fixed mindset, and stay right there.
Did you say that if you are not having in-depth conversation, that you probably have a closed mind?
I did because there's a natural fear there. There's
Yeah.
a natural fear that you may not necessarily want to be that vulnerable. Number one.
Mhm.
Or number 2, that you don't want somebody to be that transparent with you.
Mm.
And so a lot of times people with fixed mindsets, they'll avoid depth of conversation simply
Mhm.
because at the end of the day, they may not want to hear it. They may not want to hear what somebody else got to say. They may not even be open to what somebody else. So that doesn't even promote an environment that says let's have a depth and breadth of conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Scary, but
Yeah.
true.
Yeah. Okay, okay. I like
Amen.
that.
Yeah. And listen, I love how this conversation started off already.
We ain't even on question 1 yet, are we?
We ain't even got the question one yet.
We just
Listen,
started.
if you guys are listening, so far, I'm telling you, like, hit this. If you're not a subscriber right now, subscribe. Like, don't waste another minute. Put your cursor in the lower right hand corner of your screen. Find that YouTube icon. Put your cursor over it and hit subscribe. Not only that, hit the notification bell and select all. That way, you'll know every time we go live. If you have not hit the like button yet, hit the like button because it's about to go down. So that being said, I think I want to kind of start off with like what is called the hidden code. I'm sorry, the hidden code hijacking your choices. Soon as I get my screen right over here, there we go. The hidden code hijacking your choices. Now, I think this is key because you kind of started hearing some of it already. Societal systems install unconscious scripts like hustle equals worth or vulnerability is weakness that hijack your perception of possibility. These act as mental malware, narrowing your focus to survival, not legacy. So I kind of want to ask this question and then I'm going to throw a scenario at you. What does a virtue passed down through generations, silent endurance, relentless sacrifice? Um, when does a virtue passed down through generations become a prison sentence for those who inherit it?
Looking at this, I think if we're looking at I'm a boy, right? So I'm gonna speak on some things that I've heard as a young man and even now still on social media. That is, put your head down and just grind. Just suck it up and just keep pushing on through. You know what I mean? And I think in certain situations that's okay. I think it's good to have that mentality when you're working out, when you're pushing through something, when you are studying for a paper or something like that. I think at certain times it is okay to push down, to put your head down and just grind through, but not for that to be the one of the bases of your existence is to put your head down and grind and in a sense, silent endurance, suffer in silence. You know what I'm saying? So I think that when you have when Paul did that and he passed it down to our dad and then our dad passed that thing down to us, and I think that that can have a prison sentence because now you're going through life putting your head down, grinding, not sharing anything, not getting that stuff off of your chest because it's just put your head down and grind. Shut up, pay the bills, take care of the kids, take care of your wife, do what you're supposed to do, and don't worry about all the other stuff. You can worry about you later on, And I joke around and said that, I'll sleep when I'm dead. And I mean that, but I really don't at the same time. I say that as to say that, there are some other things that I could be doing, pretty much maximizing the time that I do have when I'm awake. Not necessarily, literally I can sleep when I'm dead. But I think that, that whole, you know, push through things, don't get help, just grind, put your head down, all of that suffering. I think just that right there can be a prison sentence for people who hear it, because when you're doing that, and if you really are suffering and you've been trained or brainwashed or whatever to not say anything, and you don't deal with it, then those things harbor and build up. And next thing you know, you're punching your wife or your kids, or, you're going off and going postal. Remember the term postal back in the day? I don't even know if people go postal anymore, but
Crash out.
um,
They crash out now.
crash out. Yeah, crashing out now. Was the new term. But I just think, those are some of the things that, can be prevented if, some of these things are not passed down. So I definitely think that, all of those things can have a negative effect, um, in a prison sentence for those people who inherit that stuff.
The one I hate is men provide and protect.
Hmm.
That is, in essence, a prison sentence for every man. And here's the sad part about it: there are men who still yet to this day embrace that identity for manhood. Like, do men provide? Sure. Do women provide? Sure. Do men protect? Sure. Do women protect? Sure. But we do so much more than that. And I think when you only limit your existence to providing and protecting, then to some degree, some people feel like, well, there's nothing left for me to do. I have nothing left. Oh, yeah, by the way, if we have set the condition for most men to believe that they provide and protect, and now women provide and protect as well because their jobs are just as good as men, and they protect what they own and things of that nature, then where's the room for the man now? That is the prison sentence that has been created for years. And now what you're seeing is the culminating effect of that prison, right? Less relationships, less marriages, things of that nature. Now, I'm not saying that that's the only cause of it, but that's part of it. So when we have these things that have been passed down and have been adopted and pretty much adorned as though it is a identity garment that you put on, then what that does is it prevents you from being more, because now that's part of your operating system. And again, as long as I go to work, as long as I bring the check home and I pay the bills, I can come and grab the remote and sit on the TV and watch Al Bundy just like Al Bundy all evening long, right? But how do you show up in the house? Like, how much time are how much conversation are you having at the dinner table if you're still eating at the dinner table? How much conversation are you having with the children? When it comes down to certain things that they're dealing with, how involved are you when it comes down to this? And I'm speaking from somebody who had that identity at one point in time. Like, that's like, I really embraced that identity when I was younger because that's what I knew. And so I think, in essence, for all of us who only embrace that as their identity, that was a prison that we were in. And it took a lot of us years to realize, like, wait, I'm not just that. I'm actually more than that. I was created to be more than that. So then you get to the point and you recognize, like, oh, I was only a shell of a person because this is all I seen myself as doing. And to some degree, it's almost like it's all you see yourself as being capable of doing as well. So that is a very scary thing. And that's just one, right? There's several others out there. But then I also want to kind of venture into the second question as well, because I think I'm gonna skip this particular scenario because I think these questions are pretty insightful. How might someone's loyalty to inherited survival strategies sabotage their ability to recognize opportunities for radical abundance? Now, this question kind of brings in the perception concept as well. And if you don't mind, I go first on this one
Go
because
ahead.
I would tell you that I've had some very strategically placed relationships in my life. Um, And one young man that comes to mind in particular, Sean Perry. Sean Perry, if I was never on rear detachment in third ACR back in 2012 and was a part of his rear because he was the deputy commander, rear detachment commander. If I was not the part of his staff, then he and I never would have developed this relationship. And that relationship from 2012 to 2025 still exists to this day. And there have been some things that he's shown me that if I had not been open to, I would have those opportunities would have passed me by. And so when you have a loyalty to an inherited strategy, and I give you a inherited survival strategy that is key, time equals money. It does not. When I learned years ago that time is infinitely more valuable than money, it blew my mind out the water. So if that's the case, because this is my mind working back then, because I love I don't stop when I get an idea. I just keep going down a rabbit hole. So if time is infinitely more valuable than money, then why am I giving you so much of my time for the money that you offered me? Even though we may have negotiated to a certain degree, you agreed within the scope of what you had already planned to negotiate with me for. So me giving you my time is less. It's more valuable than I'm trading it for. And you know it to be that. That's why you're willing to pay me that. When I learned that, it was like, whoa. So it doesn't really matter how far up the corporate ladder I climb. The only thing that matters is that time is infinitely more valuable than money. And until I understand that, until I accept that as a reality, I will keep giving you my time, not necessarily realizing that I might be getting a paycheck that you're giving me for the time that I'm giving you to produce whatever it is that you asked me to produce, but what you're paying me is no way close to the value of my time that I'm giving you. And I'm saying my time, strategically for this conversation for you guys who already know how I feel about time. So I'm just putting that out there. One of the biggest issues, one of the biggest inherited survival strategies is time is money.
Yeah. I was trying to look at trying to figure out what the strategy, what the survival strategy was right there, and I was coming close to it, and then you hit it, but that's not what I was going to think of. But I kind of want to stay there. You know what I mean? Along with the time is money, or um more so the working hard piece. You know what I mean? Like we were always taught work hard, work hard, work hard, work hard. And in certain areas, that's okay. Again, if you are, going to college, yes, work hard. If you are working out, yes, work hard, but not just work hard just to be working hard with no outcome or no goal or anything like that in mind, just to be working hard, just to be working hard because grandpa said work hard and dad said work hard, but you working hard, but you have a closed mind, so you're not open to hearing that there is a different perspective or perception about working. So when you are stipend or you're stifled by that mindset, that survival strategy of working hard, and you don't get out of it, it can, like you said, it sabotage your ability to recognize opportunities. Because a lot of times I think when people have that mentality of work hard, and they're loyal to that, they don't necessarily see that there's another way of doing it. You know what I mean? And I think we got a lot of that when we were in the military, because I think we were in that time where we were coming in where it was still some old school NCOs, and then we started coming around, and we were more of a newer breed mixed with some of the old school mentalities, by the time we start retiring and stuff like this. But I think we still got a lot of the old school mentality was like, hey, don't go to sick call. That's what they told us. Suck it up, put some water on it, take some motion, and get on back there in the fight. Whereas we became E7s, and so we was like, hey, them Joker was wrong. They wasn't right, and I think I'm gonna say one more quick thing, then I'm gonna wrap it up. And I think that's why, people have asked me, why do I read self-help books? And it's because of certain things like this, because you don't know sometimes that you have a closed mindset about a certain thing until it's exposed, until maybe someone tells you or you read a book and be like, hey, you know what? That's how I am. You know what I mean? It may be the first time you've seen it. So the the practice of looking at reading, investing in self-help things, and information can help you be more open-minded about certain things and help eliminate, or at least help um eliminate some of the inherited survival strategies that we have that are sabotaging some of our lives.
Yeah, I love that, and I want to kind of make sure that I touch on the radical abundance piece. Back
Hmm.
to both of them, because working harder does not get you paid more; it just makes you more tired.
Hmm.
Um, you know, trading time for dollars. At the end of the day, imagine, and I think a lot of people are experiencing this or have experienced this to some degree. Imagine if I could redeem my time, and I'm using these particular terms intentionally. Imagine if I could redeem my time, how much more valuable it would be. And I think that's the key, right? So when it comes down to certain opportunities, you will miss those opportunities because you feel that you have to be in somebody's job working 40 hours a week, things of that nature, and not necessarily realizing that, you know what, you can actually be open to larger opportunities when you actually grow out of that mindset. So I kind of wanted to take that and kind of springboard us into why society needs you to be compliant. And I think this is interesting because cultural norms is engineered to prioritize systemic control over individual thriving. It mimics ancient idolatry, demanding unsustainable sacrifice in exchange for false security. And you'll get a lot of that with, like, the mindset of like overworking, or even as far as emotional stoicism is another one that I throw in there. And so I think when we start considering stuff like this, like what seemingly normal behavior, and I give you two examples: chronic busyness and self-deprecation, do people cling to as a moral badge, unaware of its relic of generational trauma?
Here's where I'm gonna start with a small story, if that's okay. All right, so this is Sicily 1922. No, I'm just playing. Shout out to the Golden Girls. Um, Back in the early, I was stationed at Fort Hood. Shout out to my boy Cam Hines. When we were in the same unit, he was a warrant officer at the time. I think I was an E5 or an E6, and something that came up. We were going to the field and all of these different things like this, and he had brought us in on a Sunday. After no, he had brought us in Saturday, and we had to do stuff, and then come Monday, Chief Hines at the time pulled me aside, and we had a conversation that he had got pretty much chewed out by the battalion commander, because pretty much the battalion commander had told them, "Hey, I was here on Sunday. Where was you at?" And he was like, "I'm at home with my family." And pretty much the commander was like, "Well, as though that may be, pretty much, I'm paraphrasing, pretty much like, if I'm here, you should be here too." And the commander even mentioned the fact that, maybe he is sacrificing time with his family and stuff like that. I think he had a little girl at the time, but the mission comes first and stuff like this. So I think in the military, we have this mindset, and even civilians, they have this mindset that you have to work all of these extra hours. You have to come in super early. You have to come in before everybody. You have to be the last one to leave. And if you're not doing that, then you're not a team player and you're not going to get promoted. These are the things that you have to do in order to move up to the next level. But that ain't fair, because just because I'm coming in early and staying late don't mean I'm actually doing anything. I done seen a whole bunch of people sitting around doing nothing. I didn't stay late a whole bunch of times as a private, a young sergeant and stuff like this. And I'm like, man, why are we still sitting around here waiting on somebody to make a decision? But they want to stay around all day long for whatever reason. So, before I get too much on my soapbox, I think that's one of those normal behaviors, you know what I mean, that that people do. Um, and man, anybody got time for all of that? Because that ain't no moral badge. And I will say this, just to be honest and transparent, I fell into that trap. I'm not. I fell into it. I did it. Because I thought that that's what I needed to do in the military at certain stages in order to get promoted. Um, but as I look back, I've heard I will say this and then I'll move on. I heard we had a general, matter of fact, we was at Fort Hood one time, and he pretty much paraphrased and said that if you can't get everything done between the time you come in and 16:30, then two things. One, you got too much stuff on your plate and you need to delegate some of the stuff down, or two, you need to work on your time management. So um he was not for coming in early and staying late all night long and keeping soldiers from their family. So
Yeah, I think I was there during that time, to be
yeah.
honest with you. I will say this. There are some people, a lot of people, to be honest with you, that have more loyalty to their jobs than they have to their family.
Hmm.
I will say it like that. We did a TikTok live a couple of weeks ago, and I told a story about Tyrone and Tamika. And Tyrone and Tamika was getting ready to go on a date. And if you don't know, Tyrone and Tamika are my ghost characters that I use in every story. And so Tyrone was going to pick Tamika up. They had reservations. He told her what time he was going to be there. But when he got there, she wasn't ready. So he had to wait on her to get ready. So, Tyrone was a little agitated by this time. And, they got in the car and they were leaving. And Tyrone was like, well, what took you so long? We late. I hope we can still get our table, whatever the case may be. And Tamika said, it takes time for us to get ready. And then Tyrone asked a very interesting question after that. He asked, are you always late to work? And Tamika had no response. She just rolled her eye and acted like he didn't say anything. Because the answer to that question is no. You're not always late to work. Now, I use Tyrone and Tamika as an example, and this is not a shot at women, but what I would say is that what we need to do collectively, if we have a job, whatever level of loyalty that we have to that job, we need to have a higher sense of loyalty to our family. So if I wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning every morning for my job, why can't I wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning for my family on Saturdays? Oh, because Saturdays are the days that we're supposed to sleep in. But what about getting up early and being ready for when the kids come downstairs or when your wife wake up or when your husband wake up or whatever that looks like? Why we can't do it? Why we can't start our day early like we did when we was working? Oh, because Saturdays are the days that we're supposed to sleep in. Oh. So the days that we have time, we waste it because we just want to rest. But for 5 days a week, rest don't matter because that paycheck is oh, okay, I get it now. Now it makes sense. It really don't. It makes no sense whatsoever. It is a normalized behavior that we have adopted, and we have literally agreed to be more loyal to a job than we are to our families. And that's backwards. We should let's be honest. The reason why we got a job is for our family. At least should be. I mean, that's just how I look at it. Now, maybe I'm wrong. And if you don't have a family, then you have a job for a different reason. Hopefully, you're preparing for family if that's in your future. But I think that's one of the biggest ones. We have a heavy degree of loyalty to work, but that loyalty at works overshadows the loyalty that we're supposed to have to our families. And again, like you said, I used to do it. But I also say on the weekends, I wake up early too, but they'll still be asleep. So I just go to the gym. Then when I come back from the gym, I start cleaning the house until they get up and things of that nature. So, I mean, to a certain degree, I did it, but I always believed in getting out the bed early simply because you can't get nothing done in the bed. Like, I get it. And I'm not just going to lay in the bed and look at the wall or anything like that. I'm going to get up. I'm going to do some things because that's kind of like what we should be doing. Get to moving and all that other great stuff. So that's just kind of like my thoughts to this question. Any other thoughts, comments? Not the dance.
It was a bunch of nuggets in there. And the one that really stood out to me was that whole getting up early on the weekends. I do that, but I don't necessarily do that for anybody else other than me. Now, I will get up in early sometime, tap Shell on the button, but like, get up, let's go to Waffle House, and she ready to go. You know what I mean? She like Waffle House. Cause we would get up and go for a walk or something like that. But you know, I never looked at it from that perspective when it comes to there's that word, the P word. When it came to doing that, because we'll get up early in the morning to go to work. 6 o'clock, we up, we got our makeup done, we got our nails, hair, we got everything ready, got our lunch packed, everything. And we be on time because we know there are some huge consequences. But like you said, when it comes to our loved ones picking up homeboy, we ain't there. And then even when it comes to the weekend, what do? We like, oh man, I gotta get my rest. Why do we gotta get our rest? And we rest so we can be rested when we go back to work. You know what I mean? And that's bass backwards. It's like, hold up. Getting
Mhm.
up early on the weekend makes a lot of sense because, like you said, I can get up early, I can take care of some things, and then when the husband or the wife wake up, now we can go do something. We can hang out. We can spend more time together and stuff like that. So, um, I never heard that perspective before. So, I definitely, I got that out of there. So, if y'all missed it, then hey, gotta pay attention.
Yeah, I give you another one as I start to bring up the next one.
Hmm.
If I work at a job and I gotta come home and decompress, that might be an indicator that I don't need to work at that job. Because when I get to work, I don't have to
Stepping on people's
decompress.
toes today,
Right.
coach.
That's what we do on Coach's Corner,
That's
right?
what we
When I
do.
go to work, I don't need to decompress from home. So why would I get home? I need to decompress from work.
Mm.
That might be an indicator that that job, hate to say it, that job might be unaliving you slowly. Um, so we're gonna move forward. Legacy versus
Okay,
survival
okay.
paradox. Escaping generational gravity. Now, scarcity mindset, and I can talk about this one. Oh my God. Scarcity mindset isn't just emotional, it rewires neural pathways, shrinking cognitive bandwidth for visionary thinking. Survival mode is a neurological trap masquerading as wisdom. Now, this one, I just want to dive straight into the scenario, bro,
Uh-oh.
because this one I think is good, and I gotta read it to you because it was too much for me to put in there. So I'm gonna keep it scrolling, and then I'm
Alright.
gonna start reading. Um, Paya, Priya, I'm sorry. Priya inherits $200,000 and immediately invests in real estate, despite wanting to start a nonprofit. Her grandparents survived genocide and hoarded resources. Priya later says, I felt sick buying property, but security mattered most. Question that I have for you, fine sir, is wait, do I have Priya's question up here? I do not, but you know what? I'll read it to you. That's fine. Um, the question for Priya is why does Priya's investment feel emotionally conflicting despite its financial logic? Again, the question is why does Priya's investment feel emotionally conflicting despite its financial logic? A, guilt about generational wealth and privilege. B, her brain's amygdala prioritizes ancestral survival, hoarding over legacy building. C, a lack of confidence in nonprofit sector. Or D, ethical objections to real estate markets.
Read A and B again.
A, guilt about generational wealth and privilege. B, her brain's amygdala prioritizing ancestral survival over legacy building. C, a lack of confidence in nonprofit sector. And B, ethical objections to the real estate market.
Imma say A, but my gut's saying B, but Imma go with A.
Your gut would be right. It is. Now you good. It is B. A scarcity
Uh-huh.
mindset isn't rational, it's a neural hijack. Priya's grandparents' traumas wired her brain's fear circuits to equate risk with extension. Security soothes the survival brain but starves her legacy. Now, when you think about Priya, how many of us collectively, not necessarily need a number, but can you imagine how many of us really think like that? We
Mhm.
want, the whole concept of generational wealth. We desire to leave something for our children's children because that's what a good man is supposed to do according to the Bible, right? But yet we've never seen it in our lineage. And so there's a certain fear with letting it go. Now for those of us who've pushed through that mindset, that's different. we may not have those restrictions. But can you imagine, like, even when you went back when you were younger, when you first started investing, if you weren't taught investing in home, how foreign it felt to give up a portion of your check to an entity that you did not know what they was going to be doing with your money?
Mhm.
I mean, it's one of those things, and I think that's important for us to consider because it's one of those areas where opportunity exists out there, but it's something within us that has been passed down that prevents you from seizing the opportunity because you automatically assume that somebody's trying to get over on you, somebody's going to take my family's legacy or whatever that looks like. So it's a very interesting dynamic. Lens detox framework, rewiring your mental operating system. Now, high performance teams use what we call cognitive diffusion techniques to detach from fear. One method is label limiting thoughts as brain spam. I can't is just neural noise. Like the term I can't, the phrase I can't is like neural noise. And reboot with mission focused actions. So what they tend to do is create like a truth pack with a partner or friends or whatever that nature is, to call out each other's limiting narratives. An example would be a writer and an editor team naming imposter syndrome as creative resistance. So it's all about the terms that they actually use to try to silence that noise. So that said, let's see. How could ritualizing small defined acts, saying no to unpaid labor, prioritizing rest, act as a Trojan horse against inherited programming?
Define Trojan horse real quick, because
So
I think
remember,
I got this one.
Trojan horse was that big old wooden horse that they hid the soldiers in, right? And
Oh,
then
yeah, yeah, yeah.
they rolled it in, right?
Okay, yeah. Man, all I know, and I guess this kind of goes back to that whole thing of working, coming in early, staying late, and all of those different things. Like, you know, like we talked about earlier, like people see those things as like a badge of honor, but they're really not. You know what I mean? It's really you're being overworked, like right here, you're not necessarily getting paid for it. Like, what are you sacrificing? What are you giving up for that job or for that company? Like, what relationship are you sacrificing? What information are you not learning? What book are you not writing? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
How much time are you not spending with your grandkids or your children because of that whole thing about staying at work extra hour and doing different things like this. So I think with the Trojan horse piece, I think people look at it as like it's a good thing, it's a badge of honor. But at the end of the day, you're only going to be bamboozled because
Yeah.
it's not really working in your favor. And yes, you may be the one who get that promotion. But what's going to happen when you get that promotion? You're just going to move up and you're just going to probably do more and more of the same thing
Yep.
type of behavior. So now, whereas it could be now all of this extra stuff is working against you, but you may not see it in the immediate. You may be until later on, until the Trojan horse opens up and it exposes life for what it really is. And now you're like, darn it, now you got to deal with all of the stuff because life may have exploded on you.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I wanna stop at right now. So I think that yeah, I'll stop right there.
Nope, you're good. So I like the concept of Trojan horse here because, like we started talking, they hid the soldiers inside the big old wooden horse, and they rolled the big
Mhm.
old wooden horse inside. And once it got inside the perimeter, then the soldiers came out and started fighting from the inside out. And I think the same concept applies. Like when you're inside those thoughts, right? What could you inject that will help defeat that thought? Like case in point, the example here, saying no to unpaid labor. Right? When you're in those conversations, being able to actively say no, kind of helps. Sometimes it might help to kind of have that already as a boundary before you even get into the conversation, which empowers you to say no. I think a big one is like people tend to bring work home so that they can get ahead the next day. And I'm using that one because that one
Guilty.
I'm using that one because that used to plague my house a lot. And you
Mhm.
find that a lot in the teaching industry. right? They do a lot of work outside of work so that they can be ahead the next day because apparently their teacher's planning period isn't really teacher's planning periods. So, but what happens if you became that person? Say, you know what? Work is work and home is home. So when I go home, I'm not working. So if I don't get it done, I just don't get it done. And that serves as a group thing that we do so that we can prove to the administrators that our planning periods aren't really planning periods. So maybe it's something that the system has broken and expect the employees to fix, but they never knew it was broken because we never stood up and said that, hey, this isn't working for us. We don't have enough time in the day. Our families are suffering because I'm not only working 8 hours here, but I'm going home and I'm working an additional 2 hours at home that I'm not getting paid for. So doing those small things, right? I think that kind of helps to prevent um, the continuation of this inherited programming. And that's just my thoughts on that one. Last section:
Okay.
hyperclarity mapping, covenantal. I can't get it out. Visioning, visionary. Okay. Um, Trusted allies aren't just cheerleaders; they're cognitive mirrors, reflecting blind spots and aligning your goals. Covenantal partners, mentors, accountability groups function as neural GPS systems. And I think for this one, I'm going to dive straight into the scenario. And I still didn't put the question up, but that's okay. I'll read it to you again. Um, Elena, a startup CEO, Elena, startup CEO, relies on her COO, Chief Operating Officer, to challenge her blind spots. After a layoff decision, her team criticizes her coldness. The COO warns, your families never show weakness. Script is alienating everyone. Right? And I say it again. Your families never show weakness. Script is alienating everyone. What generational idol keeps Elena from seeing her leadership blind spots? A, fear of empathy a fear of empathy being exploited, a script mistaking vulnerability for incompetence, overconfidence in her entrepreneur instincts, lack of emotional intelligence training, or indifference to team morale. I ask him again. What generational idol keeps Elena from seeing her leadership blind spots? A, fear of empathy being exploited, a script mistaking vulnerability for incompetence, overconfidence, this is B, overconfidence in her entrepreneur instincts, and C, lack of emotional intelligence training, and D, indifference to team morale.
Mm.
You
I
want me to
think
read?
I'm gonna go with D.
Let me read the
Open to being wrong.
you said what now? D is what?
Delta,
Okay. It
but I'm
was
open to being wrong.
Okay, open to being wrong.
Mhm.
So it was actually A, fear of
A.
empathy being exploited, a script mistaking vulnerability for incompetence. And I think the key is where the COO warns her, your families never show weakness script is alienating everyone. So she is operating off of a script to where she can't show weakness as a leader. Um,
Should have went with the gut again.
See the gut, man, the gut. Okay, so
Over
we got,
2, not going with the gut.
oh man, you
Note to
good.
self, go with the
Remember,
gut.
remember, there's no such thing as wrong. We're learning. That's what it's
Yeah, I
all
like it
about.
though.
So, real quick, true false. We're gonna
Mhm.
knock out a couple of these and we'll get into our final thoughts. True false. Self-reliance is the safest way to protect your goals. Covenant relationships only add unnecessary risk and vulnerability. True or false?
False.
False
False.
it is, sir.
False it is.
While self-reliance feels safe, it's a survival trap. Covenantal partnerships are legacy multipliers. They debug generational blind spots and provide neurochemical safety nets that expand potential. Isolation starves the brain's capacity for visionary thinking. Um, your ancestors' go it alone script isn't wisdom, it's generational malware. So, my challenge to everybody that's listening is get you a partner that will help you debug that.
Mm.
Next, setting boundaries with family traditions or cultural norms is selfish. It harms collective bonds. True or false?
Bro, it's like the 3rd toe you done stepped on today. I've
My
been
bad.
I've been keeping track. It's at least 3. Setting boundaries with family tradition or cultural norms is selfish. This is a false statement.
It is absolutely a false statement. Boundaries aren't walls, they're neurochemical filters. Unchecked societal or familiar norms rewire your brains for compliance. Boundaries protect your neural real estate from generational malware, freeing energy to build covenantal bonds grounded in truth, not obligation. Loyalty to this function isn't a virtue, it's self betrayal. What normal will you firewall today? Last true or false question. Labeling a fear like I'm not enough as brain spam is positive thinking. It ignores the real challenge. It ignores the real challenges you face. Did I read that right? Okay, yeah.
Labeling
It
fear
is
like
just positive thinking. I'm sorry. It's just positive thinking. That's what I missed.
mm. I'm gonna go with the F word again.
Mm.
False.
I think I was in love with false for true or false here. False it
Yeah.
is. Brain spam isn't denial, it's neural hacking. By tagging limiting narrative as malware, you disrupt neural pathways wired by generational trauma. This creates space for curated thoughts aligned with your legacy, not survival. Your realism is often generational propaganda, whose voice lives rent free in your head. So, that, my friend, concludes all of the questions, the
Mhm.
true and false, and all of that stuff. Again, I think it was another great conversation. But of course, as always, during this time, this takes us to our actionable advice.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I think this was another great episode. Two in a row. Well, we got a whole bunch in a row, but this was another great episode. So if you haven't, if you got in late or something like that and miss it, please feel free to go back and watch it. So my actual advice for this week is this: if you look at the title of this show, it's called "Escaping the Black Hole of Broken Perspective." We hit it on a little bit earlier. So whenever you're doing anything, especially when you're talking about escaping something, I mean, broken perspectives, you may not always see that your perspective may not be broken. So my challenge to you is this: um, reach out and spend some time in self-help. Um, self-assessment, all of these different things, because sometimes we don't always see when we have a blind spot. Coach talked about that earlier. So when you're open to the idea of learning more about yourself, through self-help books and self-help podcasts and shows like this and different things like this, and then you have an open mind about it, I think that's very key too. So with this title and having an open mind about different things, then I think that's a good place to start. So I kind of rambling a little bit. So that's my actual advice for this week. Have a good one.
I love it. I love it. Great, great advice. Um, I think there was a lot that was uncovered in this conversation. I had a little brain fog for a moment, but when it comes down to these things, I think when we go back and we start considering perception versus perspective, and what is the operating system that our perceptions or perspective is running behind our perspectives and perceptions, I think we will learn a lot about ourselves, whether we're overthinking, whether we struggle in difficult emotional conversations, whether we do comparisons of ourselves to others. Those are some of those difficult situations we may find ourselves in. So it requires us to go back, and we may have to rewire some things. We may have to try some techniques to kind of help us to, open our mind up a little bit. Again, get to the point to where you have an open mindset when it comes down to things. If you find yourself rejecting information, you may have a fixed mindset. How can you overcome that? Put forth the effort to open your mindset up a little bit more. Have an open mindset to what is actually being said. When somebody says something, are you open to what they're saying? Not necessarily about you, but about anything in general. Are you open to what they're saying? Are you consider the possibilities of what they're saying is true? Or do you automatically say it's false and I disagree and things of that nature? All evidence of a closed mindset. So again, these are things that literally was kind of passed down to you and you didn't even realize it. You have actioned it and you have gotten good around it about doing it to the point that you've built up walls to safeguard them. And then a lot of times, we tend to call other people the bad guy because they don't necessarily make room for us in that situation. So, my challenge for you, go back and look at this video again. Look at it 3 times if you need be. Get some of these techniques that we talk about. Practice some of these things in your life. Call myself, if you need somebody, an accountability partner, somebody that's going to tell you the honest truth. Call the consistency coach, somebody that's going to tell you the honest truth, not just what you want to hear. So that being said, listen, greatly appreciate you guys. Another great conversation. I appreciate that young man right there. You know what I'm saying? I know I know I be putting him on the spot sometimes with some of these questions, but you know what? He takes it like a champ. And I love I love the way he approaches it because if he don't know, he will say, I don't know. And I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. That's the other thing. If I can't say that I don't know a thing or I'm, drawing a blank right now, whatever the case may be, that might be evidence that I have a fixed mindset, right? The need to be right all the time is another one of them. So it's just
Hmm.
it's just those things, right? It's important for us not to be that. That makes you non-relational, and nobody wants to be in a relationship with a person who's just got to be right and can't take no, just that's not good. That's not good, man. So, um,
Nobody
I
want to
know,
have no in-depth conversation with you either.
yeah, conversation with no vulnerability. So listen, I've rambled a little bit. I appreciate you guys. You guys are awesome. Appreciate the chat. Unc, I appreciate you.
Hmm.
And tell Shell I appreciate her for allowing me to borrow you this evening. Listen, you guys are awesome, phenomenal. Enjoy the rest of your evening. And as always, let the best version of yourself be a blessing to somebody else.